As we just saw, people in Seattle experience power in widely divergent ways. And that's not a surprise. In this age of inequality, both in our city and our country, some people are experiencing incredible opportunity and boom times, while others feel displaced and anxious about where they stand. But across the board, everybody has this heightened awareness of the power structure and the ways in which it's shifting. But heightened awareness isn't necessarily the same thing as heightened understanding. And so what I want to do today is dive a little deeper into this idea of the power structure so we can all understand it with more clarity. Now, as I said at the outset, a power structure consists of the sources of civic power plus the conduits through which it flows. And in a previous episode, I've talked about these sources. I've talked about wealth and force, state action, ideas and social norms. All of these are sources of power. But the conduits, that's something I want to talk about today and go into greater depth. There are four main conduits of power that I want to talk about, these channels through which all power is flowing. Organizations, networks, laws and rules, narratives and ideologies. Let's talk about each of these in turn here. So organizations, these are simply the building blocks of the power structure. They are the entities, the operating units of how power operates in civic life. And when you think about organizations, they can be hierarchical and top-down like the Marine Corps or IBM, or they can be totally decentralized like Al-Qaeda or ISIS. They can be formal or informal, official or unofficial. But the thing is, all of them are the ways in which people structure civic action. So here in our community, you think about organizations like tech companies, Amazon. You think about advocacy groups and citizen organizations like the Cascade Bicycle Club and that lobby. Think about labor groups and workers' organizations like SEIU, and then of course business organizations like the Chamber. All of these entities, when you put them together and think about others like them all around our community, they're probably the first thing you think of when you think about a power structure. But the second conduit that I want to talk about is networks. Networks are webs of relationships through which people organize and activate civic power. And those relationships can be based in some ways on technology. Of course, in our day, it's social media, Facebook and Twitter provide incredible networks and ways for people to direct power. But 240 years ago in this country, as this country was getting made, it was networks of people printing and sharing pamphlets. Whatever the technology may be, that power of networks to activate people who haven't been activated before is something to keep an eye on. Another way in which networks matter, of course, is not just about the technology, but it's about affinity. It's about shared identity. And so whether people are alumni of an institution together or share an ethnic or a gender identity, that basis for community and network building is also very powerful. So let's think about in our community's life. Think about the incredible web of people who are alums of the University of Washington. Now, yes, there is a formal organization of alumni, but I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about the ways in which people meet at a party and they realize, oh, you went to UW, I went to UW, what year? That set of relationships and connections. You think about the same thing with the Microsoft alumni that have shaped our community over the last generation. And then you have loosely organized entities like EPIC, which is Ending the Prison Industrial Complex, this web of young activists who are fighting for racial justice. There are plenty of other such networks in our community that don't even have the formality of logos or identities like this. They can be interest groups like real estate developers. They can be, again, ethnic networks like Asian Americans who are interested in politics. You have all these realms of people who are connecting up and flowing and directing the flow of power through these networks. The third conduit I want to talk about then is laws and rules. Now, these are really just the institutionalized, codified ways in which we talk about what we can and cannot do. They are the incentives and disincentives, the rewards and punishments for how we behave in public. And laws and rules in any community can be embodied, I suppose, by institutions like, in Seattle, you think about the mayor, you think about the city council, or an entity like the police department, and all of the ways in which these entities operate. What are the rules that they go by? What are the policies that either they create or that limit their room for maneuver? This is one of the major conduits of power in a community, and it's one of the most contested arenas of power. And so much of our attention as citizens and when we read the news focuses on laws and rules and focuses on these people whose faces you see here. It's also worth remembering, though, that among the people who are shaping our codes and our regulations and our policies are the people behind these people. who may be unelected, who may be appointed, who may be unknown to the general public. And that's as much a part of this conduit of power as these folks. The final conduit I want to talk about is narratives and ideologies. The stories we tell about who we are, the justifications and explanations for what we are as a community that both shape our frame of the possible and limit our frame of the possible. These narratives and ideologies can be both very liberating and they can be very confining, but they are almost always self-fulfilling. So in American life, for instance, we've always had this narrative that capitalism good, socialism bad. And that really limits what's possible in American politics for the most part. We've also had this narrative in the United States that we are a city on a hill, this blessed place that is looked upon by Providence to be exceptional in the world. And we've done a lot of good things because of this narrative, and we've done a lot of terrible things because of this narrative. Here in Seattle, in our community, we have narratives like we're a hub of innovation. Everywhere we go, we have startups and entrepreneurs and people disrupting things. And yes, that's true, but it's only as true as we make it. And a lot of our power flows to feed this storyline. Another narrative that right now we're living very vividly with is this idea that Seattle's becoming San Francisco. Some people love this, some people hate this. But whatever you feel about it, the contest over this ideology, should we be a boomtown? Should we be purely a city of the future? Or should we be a place where people can live no matter what they make or whether or not they're in tech, and we can sustain a sense of community? This sense of narrative and ideology is a conduit through which power is being both directed and contested. So when you think about these various conduits of civic power, organizations, you think about networks, you think about laws and rules, and you think about narratives and ideologies, you put these together and you get this notion of the power structure. Now, understanding that and seeing that is one thing. Another thing that we have to begin to practice in our everyday life is simply visualizing and mapping them. What are the relationships here? How do people connect across one domain to another? And then eventually thinking a little bit more about what are the strategies that I can take as a citizen to react to this power structure? Do I want to join it? Do I want to upend and blow it up? Do I want to bypass it? Do I want to undermine it? All of these questions are questions that we have to face and choose as our community grows and evolves. And to talk about how these things unfold more deeply in our community, I want to bring into the conversation someone who's been a longtime chronicler and in many ways also a practitioner of power in Seattle.